I'm Susan Siegel, Town Councilman for the town of Yorktown, and welcome to Straight Talk with Susan. This is a program devoted to basically what's happening in the town with a focus on the town board and issues of concern to all residents. Today, I'm going to have a special guest. Today, a little different format, but before I get to that, I just want to clarify the issue of sewers and hookups to sewers, because there's been a lot of confusion. Okay. Recently, the New York City DEP, that has some oversight over our sewer system, lifted a 27-year moratorium on hookups to the Yorktown Heights Sewage Treatment Plant, also known as the Halleck's Mill Sewer District. Basically, the lifting of that moratorium allows approximately 200 homeowners who are on septic systems but who have access to a sewer line close by their house. They can hook up if they want to. Okay. This does not affect roughly 600 to 1,000 other homeowners who are also in the Halleck's Mill Sewer District who are on septic systems and would like to hook up to sewers. For those people, the town has to wait until the New York State DEC grants the town a new, what's called Speedies permit to increase the flow levels to our plant. Only when that happens will we be able to have sewer extensions to new neighborhoods. So it's a holding pattern for that. The town is expecting and hoping for the new Speedies permit soon, but with the state, you never know exactly what soon means. That's the Halleck's Mill District is roughly in the northeast corner of Yorktown, from the Somers border, very roughly west to the Taconic Parkway. The other sewer districts for Yorktown, there are homeowners, thousands, who are connected to the Peekskill Sanitary Sewer District. That includes the northern section of town, Jefferson Valley, portions of Mohegan, and the northern portions of Jefferson Village and the areas around there. There are some homeowners who are in the Peekskill Sanitary Sewer District who are not sewered. And if you have any questions about whether you are eligible to be hooked up to sewers, I urge you to call Town Hall 962-5722 and ask for the engineering office. I believe it's extension 219, and they can clarify the situation for you. Within the Halleck's Mill District, the roughly 200 homeowners who can hook up now if they want to, I recently sent them letters explaining the situation and explaining their options to them, and also to call the engineering office for more information. That being said, let's get back to our regular format, and I'm very, very pleased today to welcome a special guest, William, also known as Bill Kellner, who is the chairman of the Tree Conservation Advisory Commission, one of Yorktown's lesser-known groups. We are very fortunate in Yorktown to have a group of volunteer residents who spend their time assisting and giving their input to the town on any number of issues, whether it's tree conservation, open space, the planning board, the architectural advisory review board. This town couldn't survive and couldn't get done and accomplish what it does without these volunteers. So it's really with a great deal of respect that I asked Bill to come here today. Bill has been a charter member of this tree commission. He's roughly a 13-year resident of the town of Yorktown. Actually, before that, he was half a resident of Yorktown because he was in the Yorktown School District, but within the town of Cortland. So I guess he decided to be full-time Yorktown and to move over. And he's a charter member of this commission. He has a certificate from Columbia University in environmental biology. And basically, we're going to talk today about what the commission does, why it's important, and why trees are important to Yorktown. Bill, thank you so much for being my guest and for taking the time. And again, thank you for all the time you have devoted to the town. Please tell me briefly, not me, but tell our viewers, two things. One, what the Tree Commission does, and two, why are trees important? I mean, it sounds like a naive question, but it's more than just privacy around our house or shade for our house.
Well, the Tree Commission has done a number of things since we've been in existence. one of our early tasks was to get a tree law implemented for the town of Yorktown. We worked on that for quite a while, starting, I believe we started with when Linda Cooper was supervisor, continued under Don Peters. Finally, a law was passed when you were supervisor. What we under the tree law, we can be an advisory on whether or not a tree permit can be granted. So our board, it receives queries from the planning board or possibly the town board on requests for tree permits. We are not. Our advice is not mandatory. It's optional. That it can be. The advisory is the key word. So the lead agency on an application can consider our suggestions, but we don't have a determinant role. We're not a lead agency in any application. We don't decide whether or not a tree permit should be granted. Other things we've done, we've applied to the National Arbor Day Foundation and gotten Yorktown to become a Tree City USA, which we're very proud of. Tree City is a program of the Arbor Day Foundation and the United States Forest Service that recognizes communities that care for the environment, that care for their trees. There are certain criteria that have to be met. We made sure that Yorktown met those criteria. We received that designation, and now we have to reapply every year, and we've had 4 years, or it's coming on 5 years, as a Tree City USA, so we're proud of that.
And I think that makes Yorktown more desirable when people are trying to where to buy a home, and certainly helps us if we're trying to sell our home that we have this designation.
That's right. It recognizes the town as a place where the environment is important, where trees are important. It's a quality of life issue, and I think it is a positive for the town. Every year, the tree law actually requires that Arbor Day be recognized and celebrated in the town, and we have worked, there's a committee that's been formed that plans a nice Arbor Day celebration every year. We've involved students from the Yorktown schools, and it's a great thing. It helps to educate our young people about the importance of trees in the environment, and we're very happy to participate in that. We've looked to get grants for certain things for the town. We've done working through the City of New York and the Watershed Agricultural Council, which is funded by the New York City Department of Environmental Preservation. We've gotten grants for forest management plans for several of the town parks.
Could you explain what a forest management plan is, and more so, why they are so important?
A forest management plan is a plan written by a professional forester who comes in and looks at a forested property, whether public or private.
For example, let's say Turkey Mountain.
Right. The first one we applied for was Turkey Mountain Park, which is over 100 acres. It's a gem. It's a gem of a park, a popular hiking destination in Yorktown. But there wasn't much knowledge of the health of the forest. Were there issues of regeneration, invasive species? Are there any problems? What's the situation with the environment in the park? So we applied to the Watershed Agricultural Council. We got a grant to fund the study. A professional forester spent a fair amount of time in Turkey Mountain assessing the health of the forest, breaking it into different sections and looking at each section and seeing what the situation with the environment was, where improvements could be made. Now it's interesting. The funding for this is really provided by the New York City Department of Environmental Preservation.
Why are they interested in forests?
Well, that's a good question. Why do the taxpayers of New York City want to fund a forest management plan for Yorktown? The answer really lies in the fact that Yorktown is 85% of Yorktown is in the New York City reservoir watershed. And the city is very interested in maintaining the quality of the water. Healthy forests are directly related to maintaining water quality. When the health of the forest degrades, when invasive species come in, the water quality can degrade. This can end up costing the city money to treat the water, to do what they have to do. So by maintaining water quality, they feel they save money. So to inform landowners, whether it's a private individual or a town, what they can do to increase the health of their forests, the city feels that it's increasing the health of increasing the water quality or maintaining good water quality. So that's the primary motivation of why these are funded.
What were some of their recommendations in the Turkey Mountain Plan?
It's very interesting. There were a couple of recommendations. One, we have a problem in this area and throughout the eastern United States, but a lot in our area, of invasive plants and insects in our woodlands.
What I keep hearing invasives. Tell our viewers what it means for a plant or an insect to be invasive.
An invasive species is an animal or a plant that is not native to the area, that spreads very rapidly, and that usually ends up crowding out native species. And this is going to have negative consequences for the environment. It can lead to the main problem is it leads to a loss of biodiversity, and that's bad. Now, the one good thing is, and this is interesting, in Turkey Mountain, the forester who wrote the plan was surprised that while he did find invasive species in Turkey Mountain, he found less than in some other forested zones in our town and surrounding towns. The reason probably is Turkey Mountain is a large, contiguous, undisturbed, preserved area. So invasive plants tend to follow disturbance in when there are subdivisions or driveways or roads built. So it's good to have a big undisturbed area like Turkey Mountain, and that actually points to when open space preservation is being considered, the larger parcels tend to be more significant ecologically than smaller ones. So if the question is preserving 10 50-acre parcels or one 500-acre parcel, it's probably better if you have to choose the one instead of the scattered small parcels. And Turkey Mountain is an example of that, although there were some invasive species found there. The other, and this is really the serious problem that the forest management plan for Turkey Mountain is, the overpopulation of deer has led to serious degradation of the health of the forest and serious questions about whether the woodlands will be able to regenerate over time. Over time, what's happening is trees are not being replaced. The forest is getting thinner and weaker. Also, the understory, the shrub layer and the wildflower layer below the tree canopy is pretty much disappearing from the forest, and that's very bad for biodiversity. If you woke up in Yorktown, let's say in 1965, and you went out into a wooded, on a spring morning in 1965, you went out into a wooded forest plot, you'd hear way more bird song than you would hear now. We've had a significant decline of songbirds, and there are many reasons for this, but one of the primary reasons is that the deer have eaten the shrubs and the plants that they depend on, or that the insects that they eat depend on. If you look in our forest now, you see a very open park-like vista. That's not really natural to this area. We're used to it because it's been like this for several years now. But the reason is we have way too many deer, and they're really eating everything up to the height that they can eat.
What do we do with this? You read the newspapers, and we're aware of the problem. Certainly, a lot of homeowners are aware of the problem when their pretty shrubs are eaten. But then you have anytime there's efforts to control them,
right.
Then on the other side you have the animal rights people.
Right.
Is there any way to balance the two conflicting goals?
It's a very difficult problem. I know that some things can be done like fencing, and in the forest management plan they suggest adding fencing to exclude deer from certain areas. The problem is you can only do a limited amount of area. When you do fence off areas from deer, though, you notice very quickly, within a few years, you get a very rich, lush understory developing, a more natural understory, and you end up with more birds, more amphibians, more frogs. Now, the other, and it's controversial, but the hunting is something that has been shown to work. Westchester County has a program now that they've been implementing for several years, where they've opened county parks to hunting, including Lasden Park, I believe Ward Pound Ridge.
With just bows and arrows, I think.
Yes,
not with guns.
Only bow hunting is allowed in Westchester County. So they have and this program has been quite successful. They've also, last year for the first time, they opened a county-owned parcel in the town of Yorktown, which is the backside of Hilltop, Hanover, to this deer hunting program. Now I don't come from a hunting background. I'm not a hunter. I was opposed to this for a long time, but as I've seen the science of what the overpopulation of deer has done, and when I say overpopulation, what ecologists would like to see is maybe 5 or 10 deer per square mile. In parts of our town and surrounding areas, we have studies found we have as many as 65 or 70 per square mile. And they say when you get above about 20 or 25 deer per square mile, they're doing damage. So while deer are a natural part of our ecosystem, they shouldn't be removed completely. We need deer here. We love deer. We like to see them. But when we have them in the numbers we have, it's a very serious problem. And I brought a map that we could show. It shows forest regeneration, forest health throughout the state of New York. And the interesting thing is the lower Hudson Valley and northern Westchester, if you look on the map, the orange areas on this map show where the forest regeneration is happening, where we had the least amount of regeneration, where we had the least healthy forest. It's right in our area, and deer are a big problem with that. It's
very, very clear on the map. You can just looking at the colors, you can see the orange, and that gets to our area, northern Westchester.
Yes, and one thing that the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation has just announced, they're changing some of the deer hunting regulations. They are actually asking hunters or requiring hunters hunt before they can take a buck. They will have to, the first part of the deer season will be does only. They're extending the season for only taking of does, and the reason is that has a real impact on the deer population. Taking bucks doesn't. Now it's interesting, in parts of the state there aren't enough deer, they feel, so they're actually asking hunters not to take bucks. But here they are now pushing hunters to help with this problem. And the problem is one of, it's not just biodiversity. It's Lyme disease and other tick-borne diseases are correlated to these very high deer populations. We have many collisions with automobiles.
Oh, yes.
The health of the deer herd is actually compromised by the size of the herd. So by shrinking the herd, not only will we have healthier forests, we'll have healthier deer. So that's an important issue that people, and I realize it's controversial, but the state, the county are looking at ways to do it, and perhaps the town can consider what can be done also.
Now, wasn't the Tree Commission involved in a deer exclosure project in Turkey Mountain that was linked to cutting trees someplace else?
Yes.
Could you kind of explain that? And that deals with the deer issue, but it also deals with the role of your committee.
Right.
And the whole concept of tree cutting is acceptable, but this key word of mitigation.
Right.
So kind of explain that.
Yes, this was actually a very good project. Yeshiva Kehilath Yaakov in southern Yorktown wanted to build a solar array to reduce their dependence on the electrical grid.
Positive, so very positive.
That's a great thing, and it's and they've done that. But to build this very large solar array, you need to have a lot of solar panels covering a lot of area to make a significant difference there. They had to clear at least a couple of acres of trees. So the town board passed a resolution granting them the permit to do this. But one of the things they had to do to mitigate the loss of trees was to build a deer exclosure. And the town board directed that the Tree Conservation Advisory Commission put forward a plan to the engineering department about whether should this exclosure be built on the property of the yeshiva or should it be built on somewhere else in the town. So we looked at this and we decided that Turkey Mountain would be a great place to do it. We've picked out a parcel in Turkey Mountain that would be near some of the trails. It's not going to be that big an exclosure. This is really more a demonstration to educate the public. The yeshiva is on board with purchasing the materials to make it easier on them. We're looking to have volunteers coordinated by the Tree Conservation Advisory Commission build the exclosure. Now we need final approval from the Recreation Commission. We're hoping to go before the Recreation Commission next month to get the final approval, and I hope this fall we can actually build the exclosure. And over time this will show what a lower or excluded an area that doesn't have deer, what it looks like, how that forest is different from the forest where we have too many deer. Yeah. It should be a very educational thing for the public, so we're looking forward to doing that.
Good, sounds good. Now, I recently visited another project that the Tree Commission was involved in, and that was the Trees for Trib program, where some trees were planted, and I noticed, I said, what are these white cones going outside the tree trunk? Tell us about that program and why those kind of ugly-looking, strange-looking cones were there.
Yes, well, that gets back to the deer problem.
Yeah.
If one of the things the deer do is they'll eat every young tree seedling growing up on the forest floor unless it's protected. So the Trees for Tribs is a program of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. We thought it would be a great thing to do to celebrate Arbor Day this year. So we applied to the state DEC for a grant. And the DEC, it turns out in our case, since we are in the New York City watershed, they work with the Watershed Agricultural Council and the New York City DEP. So the Watershed Agricultural Council coordinated the planting for us. So all of this was supplied by the state and the Watershed Agricultural Council.
No town dollars.
No town dollars. We had volunteers from the town. We had Diana Quast, who's the chairwoman of the Recreation Commission, came out and helped. People from members of the Tree Conservation Advisory Commission. I had some other volunteers from one of our Audubon chapters came and helped, and we planted trees in near the new dog park in Sylvan Glen Park. That's where this took place. So we're looking forward to those trees growing up. And interestingly enough, speaking of invasives, we have an invasive insect that's just coming into our area called the emerald ash borer. And tragically, it will probably kill most or all of the ash trees in our area. The spot we chose with the help of the Rec Commission and professional foresters is an area near Turtle Pond in Sylvan Glen where ash trees are dead or dying, and probably none of them are going to survive. So the trees we planted there will take the place of these trees that are going to be lost.
How long typically do those cones, I think I saw them when the state redid 202 and
Yes.
did a lot of plantings, and you see them as you go along 202.
I believe they have to stay there for several years, actually. The tree has to get above the height that the deer can browse, so that may take a few years. But yeah, and we do need them. Without those trees will be gone very quickly.
Okay, so I was wondering when I saw them why they were there, and I'm sure a lot of other people had questions.
But they will go away, and we hope most of those trees can survive, and the tubes will be removed at some point. Yeah.
Okay. Let's bring back to a local homeowner. Is there anything that a local homeowner can do to protect their trees in their own backyard, to protect the general environment of the town that they are part of?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's especially important because most of the land here is not in county or state or town parks, even though they're very important, the publicly owned open space. Most of the land is in private hands, in private yards. So what homeowners do is really the key to what happens in the environment. And a recent movement that's gained steam lately is the movement to plant native species in your yard, where we used to like to plant ornamental plants that might have come from China or Europe. We're now asking homeowners to plant native species. If you're thinking of replacing a tree, let's say you want to plant the dogwood. It used to be you went to the nursery, you got a Chinese dogwood, an Asian species of dogwood. They look very nice. What we're saying now is plant the American species, plant the flowering dogwood, a native American species. This is a much better thing to do. I recently read a book. It's a great book. I recommend it to all homeowners. It's called Bringing Nature Home. It deals with this question of what you can do in your yard to improve the environment. If you just Google Bringing Nature Home, there's a very simple website where it explains what the concept is. And homeowners acting together, even if you have a quarter acre, you can make a difference by what you do in your yard. And you can have a beautiful yard too.
If you go to a nursery, let's just say a reputable nursery, and if you ask the proprietor, will they be able to tell you this is native, this is invasive? For example, I didn't know that there are these different types of dogwoods.
Yes. Absolutely, and more nurseries are doing that and identifying the natives. There's another great resource we have here in Westchester County. That's the Native Plant Center at Westchester Community College. You can go down there. They have demonstration gardens and they make materials available. So look them up on the internet and see what they have to offer. But that's a great educational resource for those who want to start. And you don't have to rip up everything out of your garden. You can start slowly. But over time, it'll make a big difference. It'll help increase biodiversity. It'll help the environment in Yorktown and everywhere.
Yeah. Let me go back to something you said earlier. This kind of ties into things for the homeowner, for the property owner, the forest management plan, that it's available at no cost to what private landowners at what size property. Very quickly, we have 1 minute, but tell people.
Unfortunately, that program has ended. So that funding. Okay. So I'm glad the town got to take advantage of it with Sylvan Glen, Granite Knolls, and Turkey Mountain. But the program has ended. So they're doing other public educational things, but they're no longer funding the forest management plans. The state of New York does have a program that does something similar. I believe it's for landowners who have more than 10 acres, though.
Okay. Bill, I want to thank you so much. You've educated me, so much, not just today, but over the several years that I've known you, that I've learned a lot more, certainly the importance of trees, not just to New York City's water supply, but to our own environment, to the quality of life in Yorktown, to enhancing the value of our own property, and the value of having a volunteer board like the Tree Conservation Advisory Board, which has a special interest. Okay, and you said, yes, you're just advisory, but that's up to the planning board and the town board and any approval authority to take your recommendations and work it into a broader scheme, just the way we look at the Architectural Review Board, and their recommendations are not always accepted, but portions of it, and the end product comes out to a better project. And I know you've probably been involved in reviewing the in Costco.
Yes.
I imagine. So this is all of great concern, and without people like you and the other members of the Tree Commission, Yorktown wouldn't be the place it is. So I just want to thank you so very much.
I've enjoyed speaking to you. I appreciate being on the show. It's great. Thank you.
It's something we have to